We rule the cricket world. Now the rules coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans. Reaching out, touching me, touching you, sweet Caroline. Da, da, da. Good times never seem so good, so good, so good, so good. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mecca of all cricket podcasts, the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Alhamdulillah. My name is Machel and Santokie, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. And with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagilendra. Santokie, how you doing?
What an intro. What a start to an episode. For those of you who are wondering what Machel's on about, check out our Twitter account where we've been it's been eventful the past 24 hours talking about the merits of the Kensington Oval in Barbados, to put it politely. But we moved on from that, Mash. We're here to do an episode on West Indies drama, episode 2. We done an episode about 10 days ago looking at Shane Dowich retiring, Darren Barrow's omission. And we're back because, as always with West Indies cricket, there's never a dull day. So amidst the ODI series taking place against England, there has been other news surfacing, other talking points, which we're here to dissect. And the first of those is West Indies have named a 15-man squad for the T20 series starting against England in about 24 hours as of recording. So, Mash, I'll just name that squad and then we can just dissect it. So, Rovman Powell, captain. Shai Hope, vice-captain. Roston Chase. Matthew Ford gets his maiden T20 call-up following the ODI call-up. Shimron Hetmeyer, the icon himself. Jason Holder, Akil Hussain, Alzari Joseph, Brandon King, Carl Mayers, Gudakesh Moti, Nicholas Puram, Shafane Rutherford out of the wilderness in T20s. I think he last played in 2020. Then we've got Romario Shepherd. And last, but certainly not least, Mash, your Jamaican compatriot, Andre Russell himself, makes a return to the Maroon for the first time since that ill-fated 2021 T20 World Cup in the UAE. So obviously, Dre Russ is the headline. Surprise inclusion, I think, for a lot of people in this squad. But Mash, let's dissect it as an overall squad. Would you say it's a strong lineup facing England?
Yeah, so I recorded something for TalkSport. But at the time of the recording this, I recorded something earlier today, and Steve Harmison said that he felt that West Indies were favourites for this T20 series, and I agreed with him. And I think first and foremost, Santokie, we have to look at the context of the T20 performances this year. This is a side that went to South Africa earlier this year and won the T20 series there in a massively high-scoring series. They won the T20 series in the summer at home versus India as well. And amidst everything about an ODI reset, certainly the evidence on the face of it since Darren Sammy took over the head coach position is that we're starting to see something of a T20 philosophy appear again. That doesn't mean that we've got it all sorted. That doesn't mean that there aren't some areas of the team that need to be fixed, but we're starting to see what the clear nucleus of the side looks like. So Brandon King now is effectively a lock. Rovman Powell as captain is a lock. Nicholas Puran is a lock. You've got to think that someone like Shimron Hetmeyer is now a lock. Shai Hope, you have to think, is now a lock because of what he's done with his white ball game. Romario Shepherd is a lock with the bat and with the ball. Is Akil Hussain in? Did we say Akil? Is Akil in the side? Must be. Akil Hussain is in. Gudakesh Moti is back. When you look at that squad, we'll get to Dre Russ in a minute and the newcomers, but when you look at that squad, you don't see an obvious weakness. Start again, because there are weaknesses. You don't look at the players and go, oh, you're clearly a weak player who shouldn't really be in that squad. Obviously, some people are going to go, "Why? What about Roston Chase?" But actually, in T20 cricket, Roston is quite economical. There is a reason to have Roston in a squad of 15, not necessarily to play all the time, but there's a reason to have someone like a Roston Chase in a squad of 15. But before we get on to the newcomers or returnees, Santokie, it's just worth mentioning that from the last time we played, these are the players that are now missing. Aldine Smith is no longer in. O'Shane Thomas, remember, got a call up for that India series, didn't play a game and has gone. That to me is a bit of a question mark, because that's one of them typical things in West Indies cricket, Santokie, where someone gets called up, doesn't even play, and we never see them. I don't know if you've got anything to say about that, but that one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Obed McCoy is out, and Johnson Charles is out. So Johnson Charles went from scoring an unbeaten century in South Africa at the start of the year, or a fantastic century, I think it was like 132 of 60 something balls. He had a bad time of it versus India, and now just out. That's it. He's done. So there are some question marks about how come certain players are just gone just like that. But then at the same time, I've got no issue with the newcomers, Santokie. I did a video 2 months ago saying that I thought Andre Russell should get recalled. Matthew Ford, I think we understand, like, no one, I think, has an issue with Matthew Ford. I think Matthew Ford has proved himself in T20 leagues as to why he should be there. And Shafane Rutherford, it's probably about time that he was there. So that's my kind of general synopsis before we get onto the kind of big talking point of Andre Russell.
Yeah, I think this squad is the strongest. If you asked most fans to put together a 15-man squad, pretty much this is almost the strongest squad you could put out. And that's good news building up to that home World Cup in about 6 months' time. And as you said, I think there's a lot of lock-ins in this squad. So if you're looking at that top three, King, Mayers and Pooran, you'd imagine most likely that will be our top three heading into the World Cup. Obviously, Hetmeyer, Rovman coming in. I do think Hope, obviously having just kind of worked his way into the T20 side, he's probably most at threat of Rutherford if Rutherford gets game time. Because remember, it's 5 T20, so most likely they're going to experiment across the T20. So if Rutherford performs well, that middle order bat, then you'd imagine it's a head-to-head between him and Hope. And then obviously you got Romario Shepherd. He took 4 wickets in the last T20 we played against India. Alzari, Holder, we know what they can do. Akil Hussain match, that's an interesting one because obviously with Moti in there as well, again, it's another head-to-head, essentially, Akil versus Moti. We've seen Moti leapfrog Akil in ODIs. Will he do the same in T20s? But these are good dilemmas for West Indies to have 2 quality left-arm spinners battling out for a spot in the side. So it's a good look. And as you said, Matthew Ford, I don't think there's any question marks. Whereas there were question marks for his ODI call-up with T20, it's justified, fully expected. And we talked about Rutherford as well. It's been a long time coming. Now, Dre Russ, this is the big one because, to be fair, Mash, I was probably leaning towards I didn't think we'd see him again in West Indies colours. I know, like we'd said, he deserves to get a call up, but we could have said we'd said the same with Dre Russ and Narayan for like the past 2-3 years now. When are they going to get called up? So it just felt like maybe his time had passed. So it's a pleasant surprise to see Dre Russ in there. I know that he has a lot of critics about his effectiveness for the West Indies side, but I just think when you've got a player of that quality, you can't afford to leave him out. He's been retained by his franchise, Kolkata Knight Riders, which is good. Means he'll be playing IPL leading into that World Cup. Because realistically, I think heading into that World Cup, playing IPL is going to be critical. The amount of games you play and the quality is probably going to be more helpful for West Indian players than these bilateral series. And I think South Africa cricket and India cricket have said the same thing. The IPL is sort of what they're using to get their players into form heading into that World Cup just because of the timing. So I think Dre Russ is a good addition. Logically, Mash, if you're looking at that lineup, you'd most probably say Roston Chase is most at threat on paper for that all-rounder spot. But however, Roston Chase bowls spin, and obviously in the Caribbean in that World Cup, that could be more handy than an all-out pace all-rounder like a Romario Shepherd or a Jason Holder. So I think for this series, I reckon we'll see him come in for Roston Chase when he comes in as a swap. But it'd be interesting to see how they sort of build that around the World Cup, where he does fit in long-term into this 11. What are your thoughts on how you fit Dre Russ into that side? Or with a player of that magnitude, you can't keep him on the bench for this series. He's going to have to play. at some point. So where do you see him coming in based on the existing 11 that faced India?
It's a very good question. I haven't even really got into working out what is the starting 11. And one of the reasons why I haven't is because, as you kind of said, Santokie, it's probably the most stacked squad we've had in a long time, where you could make an argument for literally any of the 15 playing. There's no, and again, we've mentioned Roston Chase, but there's no obvious player where you look at and go, yeah, you've got no chance of playing. Within certain reason and certain conditions and certain pitches, everybody could lay claim to being a starter in the 11. As it stands right now, I would expect, if there's swing on offer, Matthew Ford will play. And Alzari Joseph will obviously play. Romario Shepherd has just shown in ODI cricket that he should really be a number 7 or a number 8 finishing type in this side as well. So at the moment, it's hard to definitively say if, not where, but if Dre Russ gets into the team. But as you again said, it's a 5-match series. So there's no reason in a 5-match series why everybody can't get 2 games, at least in the context of the series. Hope only played 2 in the 5-match series against India. I think he replaced Johnson Charles, like for game 4 and game 5. And Hope did enough in those 2 games to force his way now into a squad of 15. And when you look at that squad of 15, there's no guarantee Hope even plays, if you see what I mean. Because again, it's so strong that it's hard to know what is the go-to 11. But here's the talking point I've got about Dre Santokie. 6 months ago, I went to a press conference where questions were asked about Narayan and Andre Russell. It's still available. Let me see, as I'm talking to you, I'll try and see if I can find it when you start talking and put it up on the screen. And Desi said in the press conference, Andre Russell and Sunil Narayan are not part of our conversations. And the implication that everyone took out of that press conference was, well, boy, they're done, innit? That's it then. Sunil Narayan obviously announced his international retirement. Dre didn't. And Dre has, in fairness to him, for the best part of the whole of this year, intimated that he felt he was let down by people. He's always claimed in press releases, I still want to play for West Indies, So my question is this, Santokie. If Desmond Haynes was saying in a press conference, we've moved on from them, surely this is a Sammy pick then. Surely this is someone that Sammy has insisted on has to be involved going forward. I can't imagine that Desmond Haynes wanted Andre Russell about. What do you reckon? You're on mute.
100%. It would have been a Sammy pick just because of the rhetoric Haynes had given for the past 2 years. Even Phil Simmons, he obviously alluded to not wanting to beg players to join up with West Indies. Andre Russell at the time, I think this was before the last World Cup, wasn't it? Andre Russell had said he felt like he'd been thrown under a bus. So obviously with the change of head coach, it's obviously a Sammy pick. Sammy knows Russell very well from his time as West Indies captain and on the franchise scene. And I also think this would also sort of explain the Narayan decision to retire. Obviously, the timing of Narayan's decision meant that Sammy or whoever had obviously reached out to Narayan and Russell last month about playing these T20s. And that had obviously prompted Narayan to announce his retirement because he wasn't going to play for West Indies cricket. And obviously Russell's accepted it. So yeah, it's definitely a Sammy decision. And it's something when Sammy was appointed coach earlier this year, we did say, what influence will he have on bringing sort of players back in like a Hetmeyer, Lewis, Russell, based on his relationship as like a representative of players almost, just because of his career. So this is obviously a case of Sammy having a massive influence. And you'd imagine, Haynes wouldn't have had much input on Russell being recalled just because of his dismissive nature of talking about Russell and Narayan in past press conferences and lack of communication. So yeah, this is an effect of Sammy, and hopefully we can see Russell. I'd imagine this is a one last dance scenario for Russell. I'd imagine he's going to play up to the World Cup and then finally retire from West Indies cricket after that. So you hope we can get the best out of him for the next 6 months and hopefully take us to glory in the World Cup, Mesh.
Look at this, Santokie. I was trying to find that tweet with the press conference. I never found it. I found it. So it was September the 14th, 2022. Was that? Oh, it's when our World Cup squad was announced. And Desi said, Dre Russ wasn't selected. He's not performing. We have moved on from Andre Russell, right? And then we tweeted after that World Cup squad was announced, and this was our tweet. This is why people should listen to Caribbean Cricket Podcast, the mecca of all podcasts. We said, I'm sure this will come. Sorry, we said, I want to say that this is the end of Narayan and Dre Russ, and they may well officially retire from West Indies duty. However, 2024, the T20 World Cup is in our backyard. Both have the possibility of a last dance scenario. If we get a new head coach or selectors, anything is possible.
Yeah.
So we didn't get new selectors, but we got a new head coach, and Dre Russ has returned. And I think I make you right, Santokie. I reckon Sammy probably put feelers out to Narayan. And that's why we got the retirement one. But just to finish up on Dre Russell, one thing I will say, because some people say, obviously, when we record these things, people jump in the comments and and obviously we love all the comments, but people say, but what does Andre Russell bring to the team? He never does anything for West Indies, blah, blah, blah. Here's why I think they've gone to him. One, big match experience, irrespective of what you believe about whether he shows that enough for West Indies. Big match experience in the best leagues in T20 cricket. Two, we have been struggling to find a quick pacer. Now, this is where some people no doubt disagree with me. In our squad, we have Matthew Ford, Alzari Joseph, Romario Shepherd. I think Andre Russell is quicker than Matthew Ford. I think he's quicker than Romario Shepherd. Russell, even with his broken down knees, still has the ability to bowl very quick bumpers and quicker deliveries than those other two pacers that I suggested. Russell also has the ability to bowl at the death, and he has the ability to bowl within. Basically, Russell can bowl at any stage of an innings, and I think they're looking at him and thinking he offers us enforcer overs and death overs bowling, and the death overs have always been something that West Indies have struggled with in recent times. And based on his CPL form, Santokie, Dre Russ demanded a recall because he bowled better than the majority of pacers in CPL. And if anything, and the final point I'll make on Dre, it's that rather than focus on why is Dre there, I think the focus should be on why were no other pacers in the region able to displace him.
Yeah, and I think that's a good topic to end on. So we look forward to seeing how Dre Russ performs against the England series, which, as we said, is starting in 24 hours. Now, Mash, onto our second talking point, second half of the show. Cricket West Indies have belatedly announced West Indies central contracts for senior men's and senior women's team from October 2023 to October 2024. Now, we're going to go with the men's senior team, 4 West Indies men have been offered contracts for the first time. Gudakesh Moti, Casey Carty, Tejnarayan Chandapur, and Alec Afanase. And interestingly enough, there was a note in the press release saying Nicholas Pooran, Jason Holder, and Carl Mayers had declined central contract offers, although they are still committed and available to West Indies cricket. Now, Mash, whilst this may be a surprise to some people, we'd predicted building up to this announcement that those 3 exact players, for various reasons, would probably decline central contracts. So I guess it just reflects the cricketing landscape and sort of the money on offer in franchise cricket. Particularly if you look at Nicholas Pooran, he's playing the UAE T20 in January, South Africa T20. He's got an IPL deal. He's got the Major League Cricket in the summer, CPL. The Big Bash is available end of next year. So already that's 6 off the top of my head he could play. So I guess you can't really blame players. I mean, Mayers has got an IPL contract as well. Jason Holder will be looking to get one in the auction, and Jason Holder's on the franchise circuit as well. So I guess for West Indies cricket, it's realistic that players declined it, and I guess they should also kind of be not grateful, but it's only 3 players, Mash, at the end of the day. It could have been a lot worse for West Indies cricket.
Yeah, this is just the beginning, Santokie. And I'm not really here to hear anybody say Nicholas Pooran isn't committed to West Indies cricket, Carl Mayers isn't committed to West Indies cricket. People better lock in and get ready, because we're going to see an awful lot of this, or an awful lot more of this going forward. The next evolution of all of this, Santokie, is our players exclusively signing to clubs and being loaned back to the West Indies when West Indies want them for international duty. So this is just the next stage of the inevitable that's going to happen vis-a-vis West Indies cricket and West Indies cricketers. Now, each one, though, if we deal with the 3 non-contract players first and foremost, I think we have to look at them slightly differently, though. So with Puran, I think that World Cup disaster has gone a big way to him doing this. Remember, Puran basically, didn't he score 2 centuries in that World Cup?
Yeah.
Effectively was at the forefront, was our best performer with the bat in the World Cup, and we crashed out in horrific circumstances. We have no ODI World Cup now for 4 years, if we even make it. So as far as Puran's concerned, his calendar is free now. Like ODIs, he will say, are pretty pointless until our next set of World Cup qualifiers and or the World Cup. So he's going to go make his money. He'll never get a test match call up. So his calendar is free in that sense as well. So he's got to go in his mind, in his agent's mind, I'm free to stack. Now, remember, in the press release, they did say he has made himself available for all West Indies T20s. So it's not like he's saying bun West Indies completely. He'll always be there for T20s. So that's Puran. Holder, his one is simple to me. He's 31 years old. He was the poster boy for West Indies cricket for the best part of 7 years of his career, lost the captaincy. And do you know what, Santokie? I think this all stems now back to losing the captaincy. I think ever since that moment, he's slowly but surely, and then obviously the pandemic, he's slowly but surely been like, it's my turn to make a bag. Yeah. Like we've seen the kind of evolution of Jason Holder as a T20 player over the last 2 years. And at 31 years old, I think he's just thinking, it's my bag time. I want to make a bag just like everyone else has made a bag. It's time for West Indies to succession plan without me. I still think he'll play test matches. I think he as well has said he'll play T20s. But the only question mark I have about Holder, Santokie, is why is he not retired from ODIs? Or is it a case of when we go to the World Cup qualifiers in 2026, he'll just say, I'm ready. I'm available if you need me. Okay. So that's Holder. The last person, though, Santokie, which is the one I really want your opinion on, is Carl Mayers. I'm surprised at that one. And the reason why I'm surprised at that is he's an all-format player. He's in and around our test squad. He's in and around the ODI team. He's in and around the T20 team. So I'm just surprised his isn't as clear as Puran's. His isn't as clear as Holder's. I'm surprised that he's rejected the contract. Where do you stand on that, Santokie?
I just think it's so Carl Mayer's got retained. I forgot by which IPL franchise. Obviously the financial value for that would be a lot more than a West Indies central contract. And I just think if you're his agent or his camp, once you've got an IPL deal, you've been retained for like a season like he has, that immediately raises your stock for other franchise leagues. So with so many franchise leagues coming up, we've got the American one in the summer, which is paying up to $400K for $400,000 for players. Obviously, you still got CPL, you've got the Big Bash, you've got the Pakistan Super League, Bangladesh Premier League, UAE one. Carl Mayers obviously plays for South Africa T20. I just think if you're Carl Mayers, you're making so much money from the South Africa T20 and IPL, which is what he's got contracts for already. You'd almost be foolhardy to sign a West Indies contract because that's going to block your potential earnings after the IPL when you're going to be in demand for other franchise leagues. So I just think he's looked at it similar to what you said about Jason Holder. He's probably thought, listen, I've had to hustle my way so far. Like I'm 32 now, 31, 32 now. It's my time to sort of make the most of the bags coming my way. So I just think if you're Carl Mayers, signing a West Indies contract is essentially blocking potential earnings for next year, which is why I think he's decided to go down that route. As you said, it is surprising because he's an all-format player. But when you look at it purely from a financial point of view, it makes complete sense.
I did forget. That's a really good point you raised. Carl's 31. I actually forgot that. He's a 31-year-old youth man. So he's got to make his P's. What I would say as well, though, which is interesting now, if I just pivot slightly, Santokie, to the global market and T20 market, we've seen that this year Australia and England, in order to prevent their players doing that, were the first test nations to go down here's a 3-year contract, here's a 2-year contract. So offering their players the financial security bag of a multi-year contract. So these players aren't being like, their players don't have to worry about, well, boy, I can sign this 1-year contract with my cricket board, but what if they don't offer me one again a year from now? So the players of the ECB and Cricket Australia have done here's 3 years, here's 2 years. So those players have got financial security and big bucks for guaranteed, down payment guaranteed. We can't counteract the market, Santokie. Cricket West Indies can't afford to give any player in the Caribbean a 3-year contract. And even if they gave them a 3-year contract, someone like, let me pick a player. Like, who have they given the contracts to that may well get okay, let's pick Alec Athanaze, right? Alec Athanaze is 24. They could offer Alec Athanaze a 3-year Cricket West Indies contract, take him up to 27, and that would be peanuts compared to what an English player is making, what a Cricket Australia player is making. But you see, by the time that 3-year contract would have expired, Alec Athanaze's name is known now, right? You could never get him again for a 3-year contract. Like, you've only got a certain window in Cricket West Indies where you could do this, and how many players could they feasibly do this to? Akil Hussain would never sign a 3-year contract. Do you see what I mean? So we're stuck, Santokie. We don't have the financial capabilities to be able to get away with going, well, let's lock our players in like this. So as much as we've got these contracts now, 1 year from now, we could see a next 3 players currently in this bag of 15 go, yeah, I'm not signing next year. I'm going down the Jason Holder bag route. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I think it sets a precedent. And as you said, we don't have the security of an English cricket board who, I think their contracts are worth £1.2 million a year, and they offered 3-year contracts to a lot of players. So we don't have that security. So it's, as always with West Indies cricket, it's almost walking on a tightrope at the moment. You never know what's going to happen in regards to that. And just to clarify, players who had contracts last year in 2022 to 2023, but were not offered contracts this year: Nkrumah Bonner, Obed McCoy, Odean Smith, Hayden Walsh Jr. And I think it's fair to say none of those are really surprising. They've been, with Obed McCoy, injuries have kept him out of the West Indies side for the past year. Odean Smith, Hayden Walsh Jr. and Bonner have fallen out of favour and are no longer being picked for West Indies cricket. So those sort of make rational sense, Mash.
Yeah, I've got no issue with that. And should none of those players get T20 contracts, what happens when you lose your central contract with Cricket West Indies is you go down to a regional contract with your respective franchise. So someone like Hayden Walsh could now go down to a regional contract with the Leeward Island Hurricanes, etc. So it's not like they're completely out of pocket. Whereas someone like Odean Smith, well, he'll just go on the T20 circuit and make his money back that way. But one person who didn't get a contract, who's funnily enough, Santokie, no mention was made of it in the press release. His name just wasn't there. Classic West Indies PR disaster. So Jermaine Blackwood's name wasn't on the retained list, and his name wasn't mentioned in the not getting a contract list, right? Jermaine Blackwood was the vice captain of the test team, Santokie. Are we to assume he's dropped?
Yeah, I think so, Mash. I mean, we talked about on the show just because of his lack of form. However, he played every test match for West Indies in 2023. So, bearing in mind these contracts were offered in October, was it discussed with him that, listen, you're not getting picked for our next test series in Australia based on form, so we're not offering you a contract? Or it seems a bit confusing, because if you've got a man who's been playing every test match for you, surely you get a contract, because you've been playing for West Indies cricket up until that point regularly. So that is a strange one. And as you said, he's vice captain as well, which was almost forgotten by a lot of fans. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he's been dropped, but I just think the nature of this, the fact that it's almost, he would have known he's been dropped then if he hasn't been given a contract. But it's also like, Blackwood isn't so out of form, considering how mediocre the test side has been in terms of batting averages. He's not so out of form that you can completely say, listen, we're done with him for the next year with West Indies cricket. So that was a strange one, Mash. Were you expecting it?
No, I'm not unhappy with it, because I can see how a rationale could be given for why he's being dropped. Not necessarily for why he loses his contract, but certainly if he isn't taken to Australia. It's not like we haven't been talking about it. It's not like we haven't been saying his place is under threat. But how does a player go from playing every single match to now you just have no contract? And I would love to know if Desmond Haynes has rung him yet. I mean, Desi said in the last press conference he ain't rung Rothman Powell. So Darren Bravo said Desi didn't ring him. So has Desi even had a conversation with Jermaine Blackwood? And if he has had a conversation with Jermaine Blackwood, why was Jermaine's name not mentioned in the press release? Never a dull day in West Indies cricket. Listen, this is where I finally want to end, Santokie, before we wrap this episode. So Casey Carty and got a contract. Darren Bravo wasn't picked for the ODI side, and we can understand whether people agreed with it or not. There was a clear rationale for that. I was never expecting Darren Bravo to get a central contract. But now that Casey Carty has got one, do you think we'll see Casey Carty called up to the Australia Test Series? Do you think Darren Bravo has a chance of even being named in that squad? Or do you think now that they've given certain people central contracts, do you think that they are going to be the priority when it comes to naming a test squad?
Yeah, I think so. I think Casey Carty, it'd be strange to give him a contract if he's just playing ODIs for West Indies. So I think they do have a plan. And also the fact that obviously, famously, as Haynes put it now, they're investing in Carty and Athanaze. I take that to mean we're going to see Carty being groomed to play Test cricket. And this is sort of, this contract's an investment in his potential. So yeah, I think they'll invest in a certain group of players, which is, similar to what happened in 2015 when you had like Holder and Dulwich and Shai Hope being invested in for the next few years across all formats. I think that's what we're going to see with Athanaze and Carty. So for me, I think it's very unlikely we'll see Darren Bravo get called up for the Australia Test, just because, he wasn't picked for a lot of series. There was a lot of fanfare about it. He'd taken a break from cricket. I just think it's all added up to lead to the situation where he's not going to get picked for the Australia Test Series. I think they'll go with Carty for the Test Series if they're taking, a 15-man squad usually to Australia for the Test Series. I think we'll end up probably seeing Carty more likely than Darren Bravo, just because of the nature of the contracts. You wouldn't pay a man, I don't know what Cricket West Indies contracts are, but you wouldn't pay a man that amount of money just to play ODIs, basically, unless he was figuring in other plans. So I think definitely we'll see Casey Carty, and I don't think we'll see Darren Bravo, maybe potentially not again in West Indies colours, at least for the foreseeable future. I just don't see it happening, Mash.
Yeah, I don't see him getting picked until Haynes is removed as selector.
Yeah.
I was we're gonna wrap this, but do you know who didn't get a contract, Santokie? And maybe we should just briefly discuss this. Kurt McKenzie doesn't have one, but Kurt McKenzie is the latest Test match number 3, and he's 22, 23 years old. Is it weird to have somebody that young as a Test match number 3, and he doesn't get a central contract?
Yeah, I guess the only thing is, unless it's just because he only made his debut in the last Test series we had, unless they're thinking he hasn't played enough Test cricket. But it's strange, especially when obviously you've got like a De Silva, Tagenarine, Chanderpaul, Test specialists who are getting contracts. If you're seeing Kurt McKenzie, if you're quote unquote investing in him as well as your long-term number 3, surely you give him a contract.
Exactly. Yeah. You surely wouldn't put a youth man into bat at Test match number 3 and not give him a contract to show him you are committed to investing in him. Now, by not giving him a contract, you're effectively saying, boy, we just took a gamble on you, youth man. Like, as easy as you came in is as easy as you can come out by the next testing. Do you see what I mean? So there's a flawed logic there to me in terms of, how on earth do you have a youth man in that Test match number 3 and he has no contract whatsoever? How did he get there then? So that's bizarre. Yeah. Let me just end though, Santokie, because we should mention that, of course, Cricket West Indies did also announce the women's team's contract. Yeah. So those players were, as expected, far less controversy there. So just so people know, the 15 women contracted Aaliyah Lane, Shemaine Campbell, Shamila Connell, Afi Fletcher, Cherry Ann Fraser, Shabika Gajnabi, Janilla Glasgow, Shanetta Grimmond, Chanel Henry, Zaida James, Mandy Mangru, Hayley Matthews, Karishma Ramarak, Stefani Taylor, and Rashada Williams. So it's just important that we also mention those names. No shocks there whatsoever. Exactly. And the expected names in for the West Indies women. Last words to you, Santokie.
Yeah, we said we keep this going as a recurring format. West Indies drama. It wasn't long we had to wait. I know it's not headline Granby drama like the Shane Dulwich retirement was, but this is newsworthy stuff. Dre Russ back in the T20 side, rejection of contracts, players not getting central contracts. So we thought we'd just summarize this and we'll keep it going. So whenever the next bit of West Indies drama or news drops, be sure to look out for West Indies Drama episode 3. And as always, we'll be giving regular content in regards to that T20 series between West Indies and England. So keep a lookout for that. And as promised on the show earlier, we will look at the A-team series against South Africa. We haven't had time to get around to it now, but in the coming days, hopefully we'll do a breakdown. We want to do justice to the players that took part, so we didn't want to shoehorn them into this episode. We think a specific episode on that. So keep a lookout for that. And as always, keep on supporting the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. You know, even if you're Bayesian, you can support us as well, despite the recent controversy. So keep the movement going, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care, everyone. Good evening and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.